Hi, Stephen. I wondered if you could get us started by introducing yourself, your background, expertise, and your current role.
Yep, so my name is Stephen Hill. My current role is Director of Research at Research England, where I'm responsible for work on research funding, but also research assessment, which includes the Research Excellence Framework, in which we assess, amongst other things, the impact of research. I've been in this role or similar roles, focusing on research assessment and impact for little more than 10 years. So I was involved in the REF that concluded in 2014 and also the one that concluded in 2021. I'm very actively involved in preparing for the next Research Excellence Framework.
What kind of evidence do you personally find convincing when you look at policy impacts that are claimed or reported?
Yeah, I think there's a wide diversity of evidence, and I think one of the challenges in policy impact is that it can be quite hard to bring about changes in policy, particularly at government level. I think it's important in looking at the evidence to look at some of those intermediate steps between academic research and policy impact. Changing the way people view the nature of a policy problem, or raising its profile, or stimulating debate on policy challenges are all important outcomes from research, and I think it's important to try and capture the evidence of those. One of the things that's very compelling in looking at case studies is where you can see people who've thought carefully not only about how to deliver the impact, but also how they're evaluating that as they go. And that kind of join up of evidence is often very compelling, that where people have targeted the right stakeholders, measured their impact on those stakeholders, and then gone on to refine their approaches depending on how that initial engagement went. And I think those types of stories are very compelling.
Excellent. Is there something that you think the researchers could learn from the REF impact case study approach when they're trying to evidence their policy impacts?
I think the main thing that can be learned from the REF approach is not so much anything about the approach or any particular way of evidencing impact, but what the REF gives to researchers is a huge library of examples of the way people have sought to evidence their policy impact. So, we have a database of some 13,000 impact case studies, a very significant proportion of which are related to policy impact. And that really is a place to go to look for inspiration and for different approaches that people have used to evidence their impact. So it's not so much as that there being a kind of magic bullet that the REF has somehow discovered in terms of evidencing policy impact. It's more that it creates just this set of examples and good practices that people can draw on when they're thinking about how to evidence impact from their own work.
Are there any emerging trends or future directions in the evaluation of policy impact in the UK that you think researchers should be aware of?
Well, I think one of the key things that that is important in policy impact, and people are giving increasing attention to, is how you get the relationships right between policymakers and researchers. And so there's many initiatives in this space going on at the moment. Some of them are focused actually on policymakers and on improving the demand for evidence in policymaking, as well as also equipping researchers with the tools they need. And one of the key challenges, I think, for policymakers when it comes to assessing research evidence is that the research world can seem like a very complicated and diverse landscape for them. They have, many different sources of evidence that they could go for. And I think one of the key trends for me should be researchers collaborating together to build collective platforms where they can work collectively to provide the evidence that policymakers need.
Are there any other points that you'd like to highlight for researchers who are just getting involved in policy engagement, maybe for the first time, or even those who've been doing it for a while?
Yeah, I think the thing I would emphasize to people is that policymakers are often desperate to get good evidence to inform the work that they're doing. So you should never view this as a going and talking to a policymaker as being a challenge or something where they won't be interested in hearing what you say, provided you're careful to match the research that you're doing with the right policy area. Then you really will have an open door from a policymaker, provided you can structure the work that you do in a way that makes sense for them.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Stephen. Really appreciate you doing this interview.
Thank you.